begin my narration.
All right, I'm going to let you go.
All right, see you, Nick.
Okay, bye.
All right, so the expectation here is that we have a fair value gap that has been respected by this down order block after taking liquidity on the high side. So it took it on the high side, took it on the low side. This close on the 15-minute, or excuse me, 15-minute. That's not even what I want to say. The 1 minute closing below that, closing below liquidity and displacing higher is a very interesting observation from a continuation higher standpoint, looking at this as a failed breakout. So now the next thing I'm looking at is we've invalidated this order block, so we should be able to displace through it. I'm waiting for the 10 o'clock time frame to see what happens. If we close higher and we respect this fair value gap, then I would expect that any dive lower should be respected by price, with the idea that we're going to draw to the breaker up top, and that this move was just a manipulation. Wow, that's awesome. It's already happening. So the 10 o'clock is going in as a high rather than a low. So then we may be waiting for this macro to work. But the concept I had as we began this bar, at the close of this bar at 9:30, was that this we had a 5-minute order block breaker get created with the order block behind it right there, this 1 minute. So we come down there, we wick through this, sort of invalidated in some respects, but then bounce up, create a fair value gap, hold that fair value gap, and then explode higher. So now that we've shown respect, even more respect for this fair value gap here, then any dive into this area right here, I know it's a lot of drawings. Any dive into that area should be respected by price if the bias, bullish bias, is to hold. Now, what might that look like? Well, I'd want it to get down there by 10:05 or before. If it goes beyond, if we linger on the highs beyond 10:05, then really 10:08, then I would want to think that something else is going on. As the macro gets put in, then I would expect it would not be inappropriate for this to get wicked out, and then basically for it to recreate this same exact configuration, only it'll happen a little bit faster, I think, before we run through these highs. So now as it's processing this wick, 15-minute, we can go to 5 here. As it's processing this wick, we're analyzing what it's trying to tell us. Right there. This is the price. And the mm-hmm. Now, because we're at the macro, I'm expecting a liquidity takeout. I'm expecting that. And if I'm bullish, I'm okay with one on the low side. So I will not jump this. If we had dove down right at 10 o'clock, if we'd been here at 10 o'clock and the price popped up down at 10 o'clock, then I'd have been in that long. But because we have the macro, I'm going to wait to see if there's a desire to take liquidity again and then reverse. This is totally legit to have, but you'd need your stop all the way down here. I don't want that. So that's why I'm not going to stand in front of it. I'm going to expect a manipulation. But notice how it's almost 10:05 and it's struggling to get down there. And usually what that means is that it's not ready yet. By 10:05, the move should be underway. And the only move that would be underway is a short from up here. As I look backwards, yes, you have a breaker, you have a recapitalized breaker, but it's saying things on both sides. If we were going to go lower from a breaker, we shouldn't be balancing here, and we shouldn't have respected this wick below us, but we did. So right now we just wait. What was holding us back from getting long was this imbalance here. We don't want to buy below a created PD array into our order. So now we have a fair value gap that was just filled in. So thank you very much. That was nice. See if we can dive this down. Now, if it does take out the macro high before the low, that's okay. We could still get long. We would want it to take out the low or fail to take out the low of the macro before we would get long. A lot of this is just evaluating criteria. We've not left any fair value below us. Is there any hourly fair value left? 15-minute fair value. There is fair value left below us here. Took liquidity, took fair value, and then closed respecting PD arrays. So to me, the bias is bullish. Now, one of the things that was part of this setup was that we reversed here and enabled this breaker right there, this 925 breaker, which gives you the breaker and the order block behind it. So if you look at the order block behind it, it's this big black bar here at 935, and you go all the way down to the bottom of that in the 1 minute, and there's that last order block. So you come down, you hold it, invalidate it, rip higher with a fair value gap, and then that fair value gap gets tested, and then you run higher. What's working against that is that imbalance that got created right there. Now I don't like to bet against a PD array that got created above me, but regardless, that's a reasonable. It's not an unreasonable trade to get long, especially since it happens right within a couple of minutes of 10 o'clock. And if we make, and we're already at the breaker, but if we make my 15-minute breaker, which is right there, before we come back down here, then the trade has effectively gotten to its target, and I'm no longer interested in pursuing it. Now, wouldn't it be great if this just dove on everybody, freaked everybody out, pushed them all out of the bus, and then we took their spot and headed to Canada? Freak out! Okay, now I expect the macro to crystallize, case, close, whatever you want to call it, and then straight on through to the other side. Okay, that's ideal. Closed it in. All right, all right, all right. Now, what would you expect is right around 10:15. I don't think it's going to wait till 10:30. It's not going to. It doesn't appear to be enough time for that. It's unlikely if it were to just go sideways for that long of a period. So we look at dollar. Dollar looks poised to. Well, it's holding this fair value, but it closed inside of it here on this. What time is this? Hourly. So I expect lower prices on dollar. That's the first indication that you get lower prices on dollar. That close inside of the fair value gap indicates we may be going lower on dollar. It may not happen today. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't. The prices of the dollar and yield are not that, like, they're not glued together like that, but they do on the weekly or a higher time frame work like that. So, yeah, my expectation is that we slip this right here. We get right through it, right down to the macro low before we bounce. Now, if it ends up displacing, it should not turn around at all. It should not. It should bounce just a tiny bit and then straight on through. And in which case, if that's what's going on, then it's not a breaker setup here, because it should have tested up, mitigated, and run down, and it didn't do that. So there's a lot of manipulation going on. So we're building up liquidity to basically take it out later. And where do I think that we're going then? Is all the way down here, 669. So at this point, we're just waiting. I know it's quiet, so you could probably 2x this until I start saying something, but there's nothing to do. You're just waiting. Okay, so 10:15. So we're at 10:15, and you made a lower high at 10:15, roughly. Well, thereabouts. Yeah, I guess it's right in the middle. So we need to kind of get down here pretty quickly. Maybe I was wrong well, it looks like I am wrong that it will hold up. I kind of thought it would get down here by 10:15. So now I'm just evaluating rolling to 10:30, expecting that the London close will be part of the manipulation. So if you're London and you're all this long here, where would you want to get? What would you do? Where would you want to get out? Would you want to wait? Where would you close your positions? If you got up to the high, you'd probably want to get out, right? If you had orders to get filled, where would you want them to be filled? Probably just below your most recent pullback, right? So, closing orders, I mean. All right. 10:18 looks like it's holding. Okay, if it's going to take the macro high first, then I would expect that would be used to fuel the dive lower. And if you're London, right near 10:30, okay, so this inversion fair value gap held and then is now being violated. We closed back above the middle of it, and so by 10:17 it had violated. So that tells us that we're going higher prices. And then it also left a fair value gap and another one. So so by the close of that, you got a reasonable suspicion that you're going to go higher, and you probably don't need to dive given the timing. Okay, so as you look at the 5-minute, what do you see? See a breaker right there. The one that we talked about. So now which one should hold? But we're in premium on the daily and reaching up here. This is ultimately where I thought the short was going to occur in the AM session, but hadn't yet. So because this is the timing of this is where it is, the short here is based on I would need a lower time frame confirmation. That's what I'm saying. I wouldn't just take it on a limit order. But I've got scheduled things to do, so you guys can watch the rest of this play out. But my expectation would be that we would trade this range. We would create a low time frame, 15-second to 1-minute configuration, which will run us back down through the macro low, and ultimately probably here. However, on the week, the bias started long. So I took a short from up here. You can see, I'll just throw it on there so you can see it. short up here down to there, and was awaiting a move like this to get long. So that's it. I'm going to close it out from here.